Hi everyone, this is Robert and welcome to IDG Live. Or if you're watching this back a bit later on the other channel, welcome to In Deep Sleep. What we're doing today is this is another live stream. We're carrying on with our series of mysteries in the world of Ice and Fire. And I thought we'd look at one of the more recent mysteries. One of the mysteries which appeared closest to the end of the book in A Dance with Dragons, which is the Pink Letter. Now, I did a video on this. I'll say up front, I did a video on this a few months ago or so. If you want my detailed, considered thoughts on who wrote the Pink Letter, then do go and check out that video. But here we're going to talk around the context, who the other possible candidates are, what this might mean, why this is important, and all of those other things. So, as always, I've got questions from my patrons. I'll try and pick up as much as I can from the chat as we are going through. But why don't I start by giving a little bit of the context? So, we are at the wall, Castle Black. Obviously, Jon is Lord Commander. He has been making, however, a series of quite controversial decisions recently. Primary among those is him letting the wildlings through. He has allowed, there were a whole load of wildlings camped out north of the wall. He's made the decision, which in the big scheme of things, he knows the others are up there, the north of the wall. We can kind of understand. But to many of the loyalists within the Night's Watch, this is a betrayal of everything that they've ever stood for. They've been trying to keep the wildlings out for all that time, and now Jon just kind of lets them through. So he's made that big decision. There's the decision to be allowing Stannis and Stannis' forces to be staying there, and the situation is now very complicated and it's quite febrile as well. And he has sent a small rescue mission, or an investigatory mission, really, with Cotter Pike up to Hardhome. And the Hardhome, the closest thing that the wildlings have to a city. A lot of the wildlings headed over there, hoping that they could be safe there from the others, and also perhaps get on some boats and escape through that route. That some of them are sort of following the visions of this woman called Mother Mole. So Jon has had some correspondence from Cotter Pike, who's kind of basically got there, and it's not a full report, it's just a quite quick report, but basically he's trapped, and he's muttered some things about dead things in the water. Jon's concerned, and so he's summoned his equivalent of a small council around him, and they're discussing how do they help out, what are they going to do. And Jon's got this idea. He is going to go to Hardhome. He's going to lead a lot of the wildlings there, and they are going to go up on this big rescue mission. That's his plan. They're discussing this when and I should probably say that plan is not universally liked, particularly people like Melisandre, who tries to, she's been on this long-term charm offensive with him anyway, but she tries to persuade him not to do it. And eventually he sees her before this meeting, and she sort of says, look to the skies. And then she sort of heads off. All very mysterious. He's having this meeting. The knock comes on the door. It's his steward. Really sorry to interrupt, but we've got Clydas here. Clydas is the person who sort of is looking after the Ravens. They've got a with Maester Aemon gone, with Sam gone, then they've not got their top team now looking after the Ravens at Castle Black, but Clydas is there. He's done this kind of thing for a very long time, and Clydas is there with a letter. And his steward says, basically, now I would say it can wait, but Clydas, he looks scared. His face is white. He's shaking. There's something clearly very wrong going on here. He hands Jon this letter, which has simply just got the one word on it, bastard. and it's sealed by this smear of pink wax. So Jon opens the letter, and I'll read what it says in the letter, just so and content warning. Some of this is not necessarily PG, but this is what it says. Your false king is dead, bastard. He and all his host were smashed in 7 days of battle. I have his magic sword. Tell his red whore. Your false king's friends are dead, their heads upon the walls of Winterfell. Come see them, bastard. Your false king lied, and so did you. You told the world you burned the king beyond the wall. Instead, you sent him to Winterfell to steal my bride from me. I will have my bride back. If you want Mance Rayder back, come and get him. I have him in a cage for all the North to see, proof of your lies. The cage is cold, but I have made him a warm cloak from the skins of the 6 whores who came with him to Winterfell. I want my bride back. I want the false king's queen. I want his daughter and his red witch. I want his wildling princess. I want his little prince, the wildling babe, and I want my reek. Send them to me, bastard, and I will not trouble you or your black crows. Keep them from me, and I will cut out your bastard's heart and eat it. And it was signed Ramsay Bolton, Trueborn Lord of Winterfell. So it's quite a disturbing letter. And Jon sort of hands it to Tormund. So, well, here you go. What do you think? Tormund kind of rather amusingly basically says, I can't read. But Jon reads it out to him. And Jon then says, okay, we're going to have a change of plans. And so he decides he's not going to go up to Hardhome anymore. He's going to go down to Winterfell. He's going to respond to this letter. And he decides that, yes, obviously this means breaking his Night's Watch vow, because the Night's Watch have all sworn not to be involved in the sort of politics of the Seven Kingdoms. And this is a politics of the Seven Kingdoms matter. This is the Lord of Winterfell sort of goading him. So he decides he's not going to tell any of the Night's Watch to come with him, but he gathers everybody in the Great Hall, and he says, look, if anyone wants to come with me, you can let me know. That would be great. And a whole load of the wildlings basically said yes, they wanted to. But he can see that a lot of the Night's Watch are not happy by this at all. They've not been happy with him for a while. So he goes, there's a bit of a commotion outside. He heads outside, and that's where we get his assassination. So, and it's worth, just because we often talk about Jon Snow's death and his betrayal, it's worth just noting the iteration of events, the timing here. This is a response to him announcing that he was basically breaking his Night's Watch vows. So regardless of what you think about the people who did this, from their perspective, the Lord Commander of the Night's Watch has just broken his vows. And now they are going to mete out justice. So that's the overall context. It's important as a letter, because this prompts a change in plan from Jon. He's not going north of the wall, wants to go south. It also prompts the action which leads to him being stabbed. So this is very clearly significant. But the other thing which makes it a mystery is the fact that George R. R. Martin seems to go to quite a few pains, if you're reading carefully, to make it apparent that this doesn't feel like a Ramsay Bolton letter. There's something here that doesn't quite add up. We'll get into who might have written it in a moment, but the reasons why it doesn't completely ring true, we've already seen 2 letters from Ramsay Bolton. One of them came to Jon Snow, one of them went to Asher. And so we're told a few things about them. There was the seal was pink wax, yes, but it was this sort of hard button of pink wax, not this smear that we have here. The writing, both times we're told about this large, spiky writing that Ramsay has. There's no mention of that here at all. Jon doesn't. I mean, maybe it's like that, maybe it isn't, but our attention is not brought to it. There are no countersignings. There's the letters he did before. He signed it, and then he got some of the other lords of the north around him to also sign this letter. So it shows a little bit of degree of his authority going on there. So that is not there. And although some of the things here seem very kind of Bolton-like, some of the rest doesn't seem very Ramsay. In particular, he uses the phrase "black crows" to refer to the Night's Watch, which is not a phrase ever used by anyone south of the Wall. This is a wildling phrase for the Night's Watch. So there's this whole series of these things. Like, if it was just one of them, you might go, okay, well, fair enough, not every letter is exactly the same. But because there's this whole series of things that makes it sound a little suspect, we're supposed to be thinking, or we're supposed to be doubting, that this came from Ramsay, I think. And then, of course, we get what's in the contents of this letter. Because if this is from Ramsay, he may be lying, but he's announcing some pretty significant things. Stannis is dead. I captured and identified Vance Raider. Theon has escaped, which that bit we know is true. But the Stannis being dead after 7 days of battle, that we're not 100% sure on. We haven't seen it. There is going to be a battle. We know this. But the idea of there being 7 days of battle and Stannis dead at the end of it, we've not got that far in the plot. Because incidentally, although we can roughly pick out when this letter is in the overall timeline, it's clearly after Theon and Jane Poole managed to escape, but it's not too long after that, because Jane Poole, after they escape, they end up with Stannis, and then Stannis sends Jane Poole, fake Arya, up to the Wall. She hasn't arrived yet. So it's somewhere in that kind of gap. The Winterfell to the Wall is about a 3-week ride, for context. So we know roughly where it is. But within that, it's not 100% clear. So we can't say, oh, this definitely hasn't happened because we've seen this. We've not seen what's happened in that battle yet. So that's the overall context that we've got going on here. We've got a letter which is hugely important, partly because it contains a lot of news that, if true, is quite significant, partly because it kind of smells a bit wrong, as if maybe this isn't what it purports to be, partly because this has a huge impact on the story just in that short period of time, changing Jon's plans, leading to the killing of Jon. So all of these things kind of add up to this feeling of what are we missing here? And another thing that I would just sort of throw in there, which I kind of mentioned at the time, was Clydas. Now, Clydas, he's quite an old guy. He's a member of the Night's Watch. He deals with the Ravens and the Messages. He did that. He supported Maester Aemon. Before Sam arrived, he supported Maester Aemon. He's not as good as Sam was at his job, but, he did it. And so he'd been dealing with the letters for years, possibly even decades, from Ravens. He'd been at the Wall when we had several battles happening in Castle Black. He's been there, witness to, or at the time that we've had zombies coming to life, attacking people in Castle Black. He has seen and experienced a lot. And then he gets this letter, and his face has gone white, and he's shaking. To me, that seems like a a very extreme reaction to what, yes, it seems like quite a nasty letter. It's just the word bastard on the side of it. That seems quite bad. The smear of pink, he could probably have figured out. If he's been doing the job for a while, he will know that the pink wax was what was used in the Dreadfort for House Bolton. So he'll probably know who it's from. He'll know who it's to, and he'll know that this is quite an aggressive letter. But he's not. Jon opened it. He's not opened it, so he doesn't know what's inside the letter. So why is he so scared? There's a lot of things that don't add up here. So all of that is the stuff that we're going to be digging into, and also the other kind of mystery here is Melisandre seems to have known something was going to happen. She says, "Look to the skies. You know, there's a bird's coming. News is coming." And then it happens, and Jon thinks back to that. He says, "She was right." You know. Now, is this because Melisandre had seen it in the flames, or is this because she was somehow involved in this and she wanted Jon to think that she saw this in the flames? She's definitely capable of either. Right. Let's have a quick look in the chat. Commander Ray saying, "I'm watching the new Superman movie tonight, so I'd like to ask what your thoughts are on the Man of Steel and your favourite superhero." Same to the chat. Well, I won't. I'm sure you'll forgive me. I won't get too distracted over into Superman on this live stream, but I hope you enjoy. I hope you enjoy the movie. I've heard mixed reviews so far. But as for me, I have to admit I've got a little bit of superhero fatigue at the moment. Uh, I may well see it at some point if people say it's good, but it's not. I have to admit it's not sort of on my list of priority things that I was wanting to be looking for. Maura Lee, very generous, Maura. Thank you very much, and thank you very much also for what you sent through the other day. I think I replied to the wrong email address. Saying just a show of love and support. So thank you very much indeed. And Adam saying just a show of love and support. Saying, "Hi Robert, have you ever listened to Alt Schrift X?" I mean, I think I'm a Alt Shift X is a bit of a legend within within this world. So yeah, I mean, and he's a good guy as well. I've met him, but yeah, I mean, I have at some point, yes, but certainly not recently. I have to admit, I wish I had time to watch all of the other many wonderful creators that we've got out here in this community. I'm afraid I simply do not. But saying, "Have you listened to Alt Shift X and Glidus's A Song of Ice and Fire food description live streams? They're super fun and funny, but also very insightful to the characters and themes." I have to say, no, I haven't, but they sound great. Do go and check them out, everyone. Okay, so let's dig into some of these questions that I've got from my patrons. So Donna Daley saying, "Hi Robert, this is probably the silliest question of the day. There are no silly questions, so do not worry about that at all. One I probably should know the answer to, but why is the pink letter called the pink letter? I guess the red wedding is called that because of all the blood spilled. Maybe that the purple wedding is because Joffrey is king, but I'm not sure about the letter." Well, no, it's not a silly question. It's actually a really interesting question. The red wedding, yes, it's known that in world because of the blood that was spilled. It's a George R. R. Martin nod as well to the black wedding, which is in Scottish history in the real world. As for the purple wedding, that is not a description given in the books, but that is a fan nickname for the wedding which Joffrey died. And George R. R. Martin has said that it's called the Purple Wedding partly to sort of show its difference to the Red Wedding, but partly because of the purple of the wine, which was obviously the central part. Joffrey was drinking the wine, and that's why it's called the Purple Wedding. The fact that this is a royal thing, I think, also is probably true. So that's why that's called the purple wedding. As I say, that's just a fan thing. The pink letter is another fan thing. This isn't called the pink letter here. Um, and some people call this the bastard letter because that's what it says on there. The pink bit is because of the pink wax which is used to seal it, which is we can very briefly go down into this one. Most waxes that are used by noble houses when they're doing that, they would seal something by you drip the wax on there. I'm sure you know it, and then you put the stamp of the seal on there, so everybody knows what it is, and everyone knows it's not been opened. So most of the families seem to use standard red wax, but in the Dreadfort, House Bolton, for whatever reason, have used pink. That's just everybody knows that that's where it's from. The interesting thing here, of course, is that the examples we have of that have got it's called like a hard button of wax, as if they've got like put a little ring or something, poured the wax into there to make this very small thing, proper stamp, so it's actually quite firm and clear. A smear hints at, we can't be certain about this, but it hints at somebody who knows that that pink wax denotes the Boltons, but doesn't have access to the seal and doesn't know exactly how they apply the wax. So they've heard it's in pink wax, they know it's going to be sealed, but they don't know the details. So that's what the kind of the hints are that we've got going on around here. So Tony Sled, right before Jon had an audience with Queen Selyse. Mel and Selyse's camps are interwoven. The Queen rejects Jon's authority and is pissed. Is this a coincidence? No, I don't think it's a coincidence. So I said at the beginning that this is quite a febrile atmosphere. It's a complicated situation at Castle Black at this moment in time. Jon, in any normal set of events, Jon, as Lord Commander, would be ruling basically Castle Black. He would be in sole and clear command of everything that everyone's doing. However, Stannis came in and brought his men with him. And while he was there, Jon was faced with his first kind of like problem is that how does he deal with this person who claims to be the king of the Seven Kingdoms, but clearly they're not actually at the moment being the king because there's an actual king sitting on the Iron Throne right now. So Jon had to deal with that kind of power struggle. Stannis went, though, and left his queen. She arrived, and Melisandre. Melisandre has power by her very presence. And some of the people who have stayed are fiercely loyal to Selyse, who is a very strong convert to the Red God. And so we've got one power base going on there. We've got Jon himself having his own power base, but then some of the Night's Watch have turned against him because of the things that he's done. So he's not got the entire, we've got at least two factions worth of Night's Watch going on. Then we get to the wildlings who've come through, and they don't recognize any king. However, they see the authority of Jon. So some of them are kind of like sympathetic to Jon. Some of them have got their own leaders coming through. Some of them rallied behind Mance Rayder, but they've seen him, they think they've seen him killed. So they're just like in a huge variety of different groups. There is no clear center of power here. So the fact that Selyse and Melisandre want something from Jon, they do not have the power to get it. He still retains, and everybody still at this point until the very end of the chapter, he retains the respect of you are the Lord Commander of the Night's Watch. And so if he decides to do things with the Night's Watch, with his castles, that's up to him. So, is this a coincidence? I don't think so. Melisandre has been on a long campaign to try and win Jon to her side, to get him to be supporting Stannis. And Jon had wanted to abandon the wall and head up to Hardhome. And Melisandre's view, and this is what she tells him in that little meeting, is she says, "Look, don't do it, because the guys there, abandon them. They've gone. They're dead. If you go up there, that's what's going to be happening to you too." So she is at this point, and Selyse backing her up. She is wanting Jon not to go. She's wanting to stop him somehow. Is this a coincidence that immediately after this, we get this letter arrive? I don't think so. Which has to immediately add in Melisandre as one of our top candidates for who might be involved in this. Weirwood Net has gifted 5 IDG Live memberships. Thank you very much. That's incredibly kind of you. So memberships, just in case you don't know what they are, the best way to support this channel, if you wish to do so, is always still with Patreon, which is why I prioritize answering questions from patrons. And thank you, patrons, by the way. I'll put in my thank you straight away. But if for whatever reason you do not wish to go over Patreon and you do wish to support the channel, well, thank you, first of all. You can do that by being a member of this channel. There's a button somewhere on your screen for that. And basically what that means is you'll get your name highlighted a little bit and in the chat, so it's more likely that I'll spot it as it's coming through. And you can give away 3 memberships, and thank you very much, WeWoodNet, for doing that. Sebastian Holden says, Jon broke his vows in life to the Watch. Bran will send him back to the Wall after death, despite the fact that he loves him. Is this a 79 Sentinels echo? Okay, we talked about the 79 Sentinels briefly last week. This is a legend from the Age of Heroes, where you got 79 members of the Night's Watch decided to abandon their post, headed south, and went to the Riswell. So their leader was Riswell. They went there, but then the Lord basically captured them and took them straight back up to the Night Fort, where they were then encased in ice. In the ice wall, all of them, so that they would always be there on watch for the Night's Watch. It's a chilling tale, pun intended. Is this an echo of it? Well, I think there will be some echoes I think Jon, I've said various other places, I think when Jon's body is lying there after he's been stabbed, there will be an immediate rush to, what are we going to do here? Because you have to remember that the thing that people are most scared and concerned about is that a dead body is suddenly going to come to life as a white. So there will be a debate. What do we do? Do we burn it? Well, some people will be against that because they'll say, well, it's not really our decision. We don't have a new Lord Commander yet. Let's decide this later. But if they cannot come to a clear decision, his body will probably be put with the other bodies in the ice cell. They've already got a few bodies that they've got in the ice cells, which are literally cells in the wall, which is a bit like the 79 Sentinels, you could say. And so his body will be taken into there while they're trying to figure out what on earth to do with it. So I think there will be echoes, but as with all of these things with George R. R. Martin, he's not just retelling the same story again. It's just like this: you are able to look back on something that happened in the past and say, "Oh yeah, that has an echo in the story we've got here." Maura Lee saying, "Hi Robert, besides being curious as to who wrote the pink letter, who is the false king? This is in the letter itself. Who is the false king, the magic sword, and the red whore? Is the bride about Arya Stark? If the false king is Stannis, it suggests that Stannis is dead at the time of the pink letter's writing. If the writer of the letter is actually Mance Rayder and not Ramsay, what would be the reason for him doing this? Is it to try to bait Jon Snow from keeping his vows with the Black Crows, his fellow Night's Watch brothers? And what do you think? Well, let's picking off these the first bits here. The false king, Stannis, yes. The magic sword, he's got Lightbringer. He says it's Lightbringer. Melisandre gave it to him. It's this sword, which looks fiery. It's not. Maester Aemon has decided that because it does not emit heat, it is not actually Lightbringer. So that's his magic sword. The red whore, obviously, yes, Melisandre. The bride, so yes, sort of Arya Stark. This is what we often say is fake Arya. This is Jane Poole. So for any who kind of missed this subplot, because this is a shift from what happened on the TV show, when the Boltons took the North, Roose decided we need to get as much legitimacy as we possibly can, because everyone knew they'd be behind this coup against the Starks. So how on earth are they going to get people rallied around behind them? Well, perhaps they can Ramsay could marry a Stark. So then, their children will be part Stark, and so everybody will go, well, okay, we might not like it, but this is the Stark line is carrying on. And as it happens, Littlefinger could provide them with somebody who could do a passable impression of Arya Stark, which was Jane Poole. Jane Poole, you remember, was one of Sansa's friends from way back in Winterfell. Came with them down to King's Landing. Littlefinger captured her and then basically sent her back up as pretend Arya. So she is then paraded around. So we've got Arya Stark here. And Ramsay then married her. Why would she be sort of heir in any way, shape, or form? Well, Robb's dead. Everybody thinks that Bran and Rickon are dead. Sansa has married Tyrion. And so actually the last remaining Stark here is Arya. So that's what's going on, and he wants his bride back. So that's theoretically that's what the letter's about. I already picked up on the Stannis being dead thing. Yes, if this is written by anyone other than Ramsay, then I don't think we can take that as evidence that he is dead. Is it trying to bait Jon Snow from keeping his vow? I think this is probably the thing that, when we're trying to figure out who is it who might have written this letter, one of the most important questions is, why has it been written? What point is there? And you could just go, well, plain text, this is Ramsay saying, I want my wife back. He seems to think that she must be at the war, which, to be fair, is actually a reasonable assumption. If Theon and fake Arya, Jane Poole, they escape, he wouldn't know that Stannis managed to get them. In their position, where is probably the only place that they could get to where they could have some degree of safety? The wall. So that would be the most logical place, and obviously Theon and Jane Poole both know Jon Snow, so that would be a sensible place for them to go. So it's not far-fetched to believe that Ramsay thinks that they are there. But if we think this isn't Ramsay, then we have to say, okay, well, why write the letter? What's the point of this letter? Well, if we assume this is somebody who knows Jon to a degree, they will know his reaction, because his reaction is a complete 180 in what he was planning on doing. He was planning on going north of the wall. Now he's planning on going south, down to Winterfell. So if you're looking for what's the purpose of this, if they've got this psychology right, this is somebody who wants Jon to go down to Winterfell with an army to take on Ramsay Bolton. Who might want that? Well, somebody who supports Stannis, probably, because Stannis is there wanting to attack Winterfell. He's got an army, but the Boltons are dug into Winterfell at this point, so all the extra soldiers that are there, the better. And added to which, if Jon has abandoned his Night's Watch oath, then it's a lot easier to install him as the new Lord of Winterfell, which we know that Stannis was very keen to do, because he basically tried to persuade Jon to do that. So my sort of starting point for this identification of who this might be is, if we assume that there's some intentionality about this letter, then we have to say the purpose of it is to get Jon to go to Winterfell. So we have to be looking for people who might want Jon to be abandoning Night's Watch and going to Winterfell. Let's go back to the chat. Tony Sled saying, is murdering Jon illegal without a trial? I mean, I think we're in very kind of murky legal waters here. My general take is that this is not one of those things where the strict rule of law is what matters. Is it legal and right to be murdering the Lord Commander of the Night's Watch? Well, no. Is it legal and right to be murdering anybody just because you want to? No. However, this is at the wall. This is sort of outside of the rule of law of the Seven Kingdoms. And hey, who actually rules the Seven Kingdoms these days anyway? Nobody's going to sort of say, well, you didn't give this guy a proper chance, a free and fair trial. So I think it's almost like a moot point. Roman Lakovets, why was Clydas scared when he saw the letter? Well, I touched on this a bit ago, and I left it as a question because I think we don't have an answer. So I think we have to speculate. And I think the bit that I'm reasonably certain of is it's not just the letter. He's not read the contents of the letter. It's a letter with a word on it. It looks like it might be quite an aggressive letter, but Clydas has seen a lot more than that. So I don't think it's literally just the letter. There must be something else there. My working hypothesis is that this is something to do with Melisandre, because she's the person who says to Jon, watch out, there's going to be a bird coming with some news. And if she has also been and talked to Clydas about this, and then he might have been a bit scared by her and her precognition and things like that. And that might be what makes him scared, not the actual letter itself. DickCrabb'sSquire saying, hello, Robert. Hope you and Dan are well. We are, thank you. This topic made me think of Lord Manderly, because I just saw a theory by Quinn, the GM, where he surmised that Lord Suet wrote it. It would be amusing if he also had little Walder murdered so that he could sneak mayhaps in without notice during the heated exchange that would no doubt ensue. Remember, in the Frey game, the Lord of the Crossing can make the other players swear oaths. The oaths are binding unless the player swearing the oath sneaks mayhaps in without being noticed. Now House Manderly is free to change cloaks and turn on the Bolton-Frey alliance, to which he was forced to swear an oath in order to get his son back. Just like he obeyed all of the rules before killing the three Freys, he will obey Frey's own childish rules before he turns on them. So, might this be Wyman Manderly? Well, he is at Winterfell, which fulfills part of this, it has to be said. He is clearly plotting, and he clearly hates the Boltons. He's capable of subtle and underhanded kind of actions, it has to be said. So all of those things do kind of work. But you have to say, what he doesn't, as far as we're aware, he doesn't know Jon Snow at all as a person. And so this would be, I think, quite a stretch for him to go, what do we need to do now? Well, we need to get Jon Snow to come down here and help out. And how do we do that? Well, we'll send him a letter which kind of insults him, and hope that he then gets angry and then comes south. That seems like quite a stretch. So I think I would prefer it if we're going down the why are you doing this route, if the person who is doing it has got some sort of understanding of the character of Jon, and that exactly which buttons need to be pressed in order to get him to be doing what you want. So I wouldn't rule out Wyman Manderly, but it doesn't seem to be really where he's coming from as a person. He's him relying on Jon. He's not trying. His aim to get a Stark into Winterfell is to get Rickon. That's his aim, and then his aim to recapture Winterfell is to be working with the other northern houses that have got there, plus Stannis. And he's willing to throw his lot in with Stannis if Stannis can help him get rid of the Boltons. Question from CK. How will Jon get out of his oath once revived? Why leave the wall if the free folk depend on him? What about the others? And also, how can he lead the North if he's failed as a leader on the wall? How will he get out of his oath once revived? I think that in the show, he comes back and then he kind of pleads this technicality. Basically, I've already done. Yeah, I'm here until I die. I did die, so I'm technically released from my vows. Here in the books, Jon has already basically renounced his vows. You could argue all the other things he did beforehand, they were just big strategic decisions you might disagree with. But abandoning his place at the wall in order to engage in politics and the battles in the Seven Kingdoms, that is explicitly breaking his vow. So Jon has already broken his vow. So when he comes back, it's not like he needs to find a way to do that. He already has. Why leave the wall if the free folk depend on him? I don't think the free folk think that they depend on him. I think if he goes, then yes, the person who's there and was strongest in saying no, they're allowed to be here, will be gone. But there are lots of free folk, and they will certainly be able to hold their own. So it's not like they could then just be sort of rounded up and sort of put in prison or anything like that. That wouldn't work. So there's a fair chance that they could just go to one of the other forts, find, as was something that Jon was planning, and find a way for them to just sort of carry on south of the wall. How can he lead the North if he's failed as a leader on the wall? I don't think he would see himself as having failed as a leader at the wall. I think that he sees that he's got lots of different challenges, which is not just about the wall. S. If Stannis did write the letter, do you think it matches up with his personality traits? Okay, good question, because let's look at it's Stannis. Some people have suggested that this is Stannis. Stannis clearly did want Jon to come to Winterfell. A couple of times he tried before accepting that Jon couldn't be swayed. So yes, he wants that. But I think this would be completely against everything we know about how Stannis operates. He's said to Jon to his face, I want you to leave the Night's Watch, become Lord of Winterfell. I want you to head down to Winterfell with me and we'll attack. He's told him to his face what he wants. He's not the kind of person to then go, well, how do I therefore manipulate Jon into doing what I want him to do after all? Well, maybe if I send him a letter that just needles him in the right ways, reminds him of his childhood home, insults him. If I write that letter, is that going to push him to do the thing I want? Stannis is a very straightforward guy, not a manipulator. We have plenty of manipulators around in the plot. I don't think that we need to be trying to superimpose that personality type onto Stannis. That's not him at all. There are people around him, though, who are manipulative, who might do it on his behalf without telling him. CK, I think Jon will get revived, deal with the traitors, address Winterfell, and then come back to the Wall. I can't see him moving so freely in Westeros. Well, this is like one of those things where I think we can be reasonably certain about the first bits of what happens with Jon, but the further into the future we go, then the more open we are to George R. R. Martin and his Gardner writing style of things could go off in lots of different directions. So him being revived, yes, I 100% believe that will definitely happen. I think that when he does, he will follow that up by doing what he was going to do before. Go down to Winterfell, take some people with him, but take Winterfell from the Boltons. I think that will allow Stannis to then be more comfortable that the North has been sorted so that we can now look to the defense of the realm at the Wall. So that bit I entirely get. Will Jon return to the Wall as Lord Commander of the Night's Watch? That bit I'm not 100% certain of, because at some point soon, he will find out that he has been named Robb's heir. That he's left the Wall. Robb, as king, has legitimized him and said that he's the heir. In fact, given the fact that Robb was killed without any children himself, according to Robb's will, Jon is now king of the North. So there's a question of how Stannis will react to that. I suspect that a lot of the Northerners will sort of come in behind Jon. It wouldn't surprise me, and although whether Jon wants it or not, he does have this kind of track record of falling upwards, people pushing him into positions of authority that he otherwise might not have wanted to have. It would not surprise me if basically Stannis and Jon kind of switch places. So Jon then sets up camp in Winterfell for a while, at least, and Stannis goes up to the Night Fort to be dealing with the threat from the others. So that, as a short-term thing, I think will work. Rural Jorah. IDG Live is hands down the best A Song of Ice and Fire YouTube channel there is. It has to be said. Well, thank you very much. That's very kind of you to say that. Martin S. Hi there, Martin. Saying, I think law is always a social construct, not a real thing in the physical sense. A kind of fairy tale we share in society to prevent pure barbarism. Highly dependent on enforceability to be real in any sense on the Wall. Yes, absolutely. I think that's a reference, I assume, to the earlier question whether it's legal killing Jon. I tend to the view that is not the. I don't think people are going to be there saying, "Well, we need to try these people" or anything like that. It's the rule of might at the moment. Whoever's the most powerful, they get to make the rules. And Martin S. saying, the point is we have the law because we need it socially, not because it is justified to say that not because it is justified to say it is just as real as a matter or gravity. Yes, I'd agree. It's a thing that we need but a social construct rather than a thing that is just inherently there. Question from this is slightly going away from the main topic, Lord Medici, but we'll deal with this one first. Saying in a recent video you shared my take on who are the friends in the Reach. Yes, there's a video I did, I don't know, a month or so ago. The Golden Company sort of say, "Oh, we have friends in the Reach." Who are these friends? I'd like to further explore the idea that House Florent is one of these friends. House Florent was uniquely pro-Robert amongst the Reach during Robert's Rebellion and is uniquely pro-Stannis during the War of the Five Kings. If, as many of us believe, the Pink Letter is a bluff, Stannis is still alive. By siding with any Targaryen, Fagon or Daenerys, isn't House Florent denying the whole basis of Stannis' claim to the Iron Throne, which, based on Targaryen dynasty having been rightfully deposed and a new Baratheon dynasty having been installed? Is this might the Florence be one of these friends of the Reach? So what I concluded was that probably House Peak are one of the friends in the Reach. Probably House Tarly are one of the friends in Reach. And there's a couple others that kind of make a bit of sense. House Florent have basically the Lannisters have killed off the family. They've given away their castle, so they will be there aggrieved, definitely anti-Lannister. So my speculation in the video is maybe they would throw their lot in with with Fagon. I also speculated a little bit about House Rowan. That's a possible again. The Florent link across to Stannis, obviously with Queen Selyse, it was a Florent, so they've got that link going on there. Would they throw their lot in with Fagon if Stannis is still alive? I mean, I think that's a valid point on your part. Probably they would still support Stannis, but I don't think that we necessarily. Stannis, from most people's perspective, has just gone to the north and pretty much disappeared now. So they probably will be like, whoever can help us out right in this moment. So I think it's a fair point, but it's not necessarily that straightforward. Chaos Ballerina, picking up a question from Nate Davis. Thank you. I love it when people do this, picking up questions for others in the chat, saying there must always be a Stark in Winterfell. Could it be the Pink Letter was an attempt to fulfill this by enticing Jon to come back? Well, yes, in a roundabout way, I believe so. So I don't know, at some point, I can't remember exactly when in this I was going to talk about Mance Raider, possibly soon. But I'll set out my case. I think this is Mance Raider who wrote this, possibly at the instigation of Melisandre. Melisandre wants to support Stannis. She is willing to do it in an underhanded, manipulative way. She's frustrated by the fact that she can't see what's going on with Stannis. She looks into her fires, asks to see Azor Ahai reborn, and all she sees is Jon Snow, not Stannis. So she will probably easily interpret this as we need to get Jon Snow on side. And so she has sent Mance down, ostensibly on a way to Winterfell, ostensibly to get and rescue Arya Stark, as a way of trying to get Jon on side again. The hint, however, is that there's at least another layer to what Mance is doing there. He's when he goes in, he's asking questions of Theon that are not just about where's Arya, how can we get her out? Yes, they do organize that and make sure that happens, but there's a lot more of like how did you manage to capture the castle of Winterfell? How did you manage to do that? You know where the crypts are. Can you tell me where the crypts are? That kind of thing. So he is there clearly for more than just getting fake Arya out. He won't know that this is a fake Arya. Almost nobody knows this is a fake Arya. So most people think it is actually Arya. Now, if the idea is to be helping Melisandre, we know she's right behind Stannis. If it's to be helping Stannis capture Winterfell, part of the plan has to be, how do we disrupt things from inside Winterfell? How do we support Stannis himself as he approaches Winterfell? And is there a way we could possibly get a force coming down from the wall? And Mance could do this by writing a letter which is aimed at provoking Jon. Now, so that works in theory. Why does it sound like it might be Mance? Well, I think one of the clues we already mentioned here, one of the clues we have is this reference to black crows. This is something, whenever it's used in A Song of Ice and Fire, this is something which is only ever used by wildlings, by people born spending time north of the wall. Nobody south of the wall does that. So the letter feels as if it's been written by a wildling, Mance Rayder. And then when you read it, it's actually, although this is supposed to be a letter about, goading Jon Snow and saying, I want my want my wife back. It's very focused in on Mance, actually. There's I haven't counted all the different sentences, but we get in the introduction, and there says, "You told the world you burned the king beyond the wall. Instead, you sent him to Winterfell to steal my bride from me. If you want Mance Rayder, come and get him. I have him in a cage for all the north to see. Proof of your lies. The cage is cold, but I've made him a warm cloak." Da, da, da. So it's like, actually, 2 of the 4 paragraphs are about Mance Rayder, and then there's a reference to the wildling princess and the little prince, the wildling babe. This is Vance's child. So it's it's a lot more focused in on Mance than you would expect from something that Ramsay or anyone else would have written. Why on earth are they so focused on him? So those are the kind of the context clues we've got going on here. And added to which, he is in Winterfell. So if you're wanting a letter that comes from Winterfell, if you're wanting somebody who maybe could try and get hold of that pink wax, then you send someone there. So that's the idea. It makes sense to me that this is Mance, who has been sent down there by Melisandre in order to do a number of things, one of which is to try and incite Jon to come and support. So, if all of that is the case, to come back to this question about there must always be a Stark in Winterfell, could the pink letter be an attempt to fulfill this by enticing Jon to come back? I think the idea, the intention of the letter is to try and get Jon to come back. That is the result. That's what happened anyway. So I think that sort of intent is definitely there. With that, there must always be a Stark in Winterfell. That's just one of those sayings. As far as it's one of those sayings which was, I'm sure, very politically useful for the Starks, that there must always be a Stark here. So we must always be ruling over you. Very politically important for them. And people are looking for a Stark. They're looking for, it's not just enough to get rid of the Boltons. It's who's in charge after that. And so Wyman Manderly thinks he can get hold of Rickon. Littlefinger has got Sansa. He's going to bring her into action at some point. But Team Stannis are very focused on Jon and making him a Stark and bringing him down, thinking people will rally behind him. Jonathan Shields, thoughts of the idea that George writes things like those intentionally, like this, intentionally vague, so that he can decide the author later as suits the story. Could be Mance or Ramsay, dependent on how the garden grows. I kind of like that, in as much as I think there's a lot of time. One of the things that George R. R. Martin likes doing is leaving things vague that will allow the reader to make up their mind on them. So I think the classic example is the Tyrion Targaryen theory, which is he's given us enough hints that makes us go, well, that's possible. And he might even be hinting at it, but not enough to make it an open and shut case by any stretch of the imagination. So I think he does like doing that kind of slightly open-ended, could be this, could be that kind of thing. With this, I think he knows in his mind who wrote this letter, because of the way that this is written, that it seems he put so many clues. If he just like done a couple of things, you could have let it pass. But because there were so many of these things that make it look like this couldn't have been written, or almost certainly wasn't written by Ramsay, then I suspect that he has already decided that this wasn't written by him and was written by somebody else. CK, who do you think will be the one to kill Ramsay and Roose Bolton? I have got a question on this a little bit later. In fact, I think I've got this one now. Yes, I do. That's from Lord Medici saying, the story needs to find a way to kill off Stannis, Roose, and Ramsay to create the power void needed for a Stark succession crisis and to provide scenic space for the real Azor Ahai to shine. How do you think George R. R. Martin will get rid of Stannis, Roose, and Ramsay? I suppose the most efficient way would be to kill them all in battle, but for them to all to die this way would be quite repetitive. So I think the first thing is Stannis. First of all, just as another little hint we've got in here, at one point when George R. R. Martin was sort of muttering a bit about Game of Thrones, the TV show, he made a point of saying, in my book, Stannis is still alive, which could be a clue to the fact that this letter here saying Stannis is dead is not right. Obviously, on the TV show, he did die around this point because Brienne came and killed him. Brienne's nowhere near there, so that is not going to happen. It's possible that is, the timing is roughly the same. That Stannis dies roughly now, but I don't think it's necessary because he, if the North rallies around the Starks, and if he wants Jon to be Lord of Winterfell, so that he can then focus in on the thing that he believes is now his role, which is taking on, Sandra saying, the Azor Ahai reborn thing, him defending humanity, defending the Seven Kingdoms against the others. So he could survive this next bit and then head up to the wall and be leading the defense of the wall while Jon is doing whatever it is he needs to do slightly south of the wall, probably trying to get hold of lots of dragonglass and Valyrian steel swords, and probably somehow meeting Daenerys. So there's a lot that he has to be doing, and somebody has to be sort of leading the fight at the wall. So it wouldn't surprise me if Stannis survives this next bit. As for Roose and Ramsay, yes, I think Roose definitely does need to die. I do quite like the idea that Ramsay could kill him, but the way that this is set up within Winterfell is that we get a building coalition of Northerners who are Stark loyalists. within the walls of Winterfell. So if we work on the assumption Stannis wins the battle he's going to have at the Crofters village, he manages to get his army somehow up to Winterfell to try and attack it. If I were someone like Wyman Manderly, I would say, well, while they attack outside, we will try and do damage inside. And what's the damage that they could do, which would be the biggest thing, is killing Roose. So it would not surprise me if one of the people inside, maybe even Mance Rayder himself, does kill Roose while Stannis marches on Winterfell. As for Ramsay, the whole Sansa getting her revenge thing on him, which happened on the TV show, that whole plot line did not happen in the books, has not happened in the books. So it wouldn't be as satisfying. I do wonder whether he's the kind of person, he clearly is happy out in the wild. Perhaps he will escape. He could die in a battle, absolutely, but perhaps he will escape out. And while the North seems to have been secured, at the back of everyone's minds is this idea, well, Ramsay's still out there somewhere. We have to deal with him. And CK saying, do you think Stannis will leverage Theon's knowledge of Winterfell to infiltrate it? It's too perfect for him to be alive in captivity with Stannis. Well, Theon, in the pre-release chapter from the Winds of Winter, Theon is Stannis's captive, and Stannis seems to be of the opinion that he will get whatever information he can out of Theon, and then he'll kill him, because the Northern Lords think that Theon killed Bran and Rickon, and that they want revenge on him. So he will try and curry favor with them by killing Theon. However, my instinct is that Theon is not going to die then, partly because the Manderlys are coming towards Stannis at the moment, and the Manderlys are the ones who know that Rickon is still alive, so Theon didn't kill him. And the hints are that Theon's going to be taken to a heart tree to be killed, and we know that Bran talks through heart trees, so some combination of Bran and Rickon is probably going to be able to save Theon's life. Sebastian Holden, is there an antagonist who will survive the story? Interesting question. Antagonist. Well, I suppose it depends on what you count as an antagonist, really. There will probably be quite a few left over in Essos. In Westeros, I think a lot of people will die on both sides. As I said earlier, I could see a way that someone like Ramsay could survive all the way through. I could see similarly a way someone like Randall Tarley could survive all the way through. So there are some people who could make it. But the big antagonists, the others, that will be dealt with. Euron, I think, will be killed. Cersei, I think, will be killed. My struggle with is that the antagonist is it's the right word, but George R. R. Martin has some people who are antagonists for other POV characters. So as far as Cersei is concerned, Tyrion is an antagonist. I think Tyrion will survive. As far as Tyrion's concerned, Cersei's the antagonist. So because we get these POV characters, not just from the purely good guy side, but also people who are, well, most of them are morally grey in some way, they have a whole variety of these people who are antagonists to them. Okay, let's go to Sir Friend saying, happy Thursday, Robert. Happy Thursday to you too. Knowing you'll get to Mance Raider in the stream, yes. So I did do that one already. Was I the only one who felt a bit cheated by the Mance deception? I love the character. Being willing to die rather than bend the knee made sense. I don't think he secretly did bend the knee to Stannis to save his life, and it felt a little strange for Stannis to go along with the plan. What are your thoughts? Happy for you to persuade me if there's more to it. Also, what do you see the most satisfying conclusion to Mance's part of the story, particularly if he did write the letter? Surely Jon would be angry. Best wishes, warmest regards. Well, to you too. Um, so, Mance being sent down to Winterfell. I think a lot of this depends on what he's been charged to do. So, Melisandre saved him, and it's if all it is that she saved him in order to try and to send him down to Winterfell to try and save fake Arya, that would be a little bit. Oh well, you could have sent somebody else. You didn't have to be him. If he has other missions while he's down there, which I think he does, then it kind of makes more sense to me. As for Stannis, kind of like ticking it, I suspect he wasn't a big fan. He had reservations about a lot of what Melisandre was wanting to do, but I think he kind of just allowed it. If this is going to help him retake Winterfell. As for the second part, what would be the most satisfying conclusion to Mance's part of the story? I think well, I mean there's a lot. What he wants, I think at this point, he doesn't actually want to be a leader. He's a leader of the wildlings because he's got leadership material, but because he saw a threat and he wanted to save his people. What he really wants to do is settle down with his little family, I suspect. So I think the most satisfying end is that after he's done all of his things, he gets to settle down somewhere. Perhaps at the wall, because he started at the wall, of course. So perhaps that's the best place for him for his story to come full arc. I am relatively optimistic. I know a lot of people think Mance will die because it's like, what else is left for him in this? And I think that's a valid point, but he could survive. You know, he's one of those characters where actually he's clearly a good fighter. He's clearly very competent. If anyone's going to survive through this, then he's got as good a chance as anyone. Commander Ray saying, hello, Robert and Dan the dog. You already asked me about Superman towards the beginning, so I won't answer about Superman again. I wanted to talk about the pink letter. Clearly, it was meant to drive Jon into action and is full of lies. And while we as show watchers hear the bastard line repeatedly as a very Ramsay thing, I think the letter was written too well to be him. And with how Mance was described in the letter, it implied that Jon knew him. It implied that Jon knew him, something I believe only Mance would do because he needed Jon to finally take up his sword. However, I have one other theory, and that is to blame who else but Bloodraven. Not founded on solid facts, but would be going with what he wants to push Jon to take power. So it wouldn't surprise me if Bloodraven in some way influenced the decision of Vance to write and send the letter. Okay, so and then you say thanks for the streams and the new Spotify channel. So thank you for reminding me. My videos on my main channel, I've now started uploading them onto Spotify. So I'm going through the back catalogue first. So if you listen to stuff, watch stuff on Spotify, then that's another way for you to access what I do. If you feel like going there and giving a nice review or something, I'm sure that would help bump the algorithm a bit, and that would, I would be hugely appreciative. But the main thing is, if you find Spotify easier to access than other places, then you can now get the main videos there. And because people have asked, yes, these live streams and things like that, at some point I may well put on Spotify as well. I'm still trying to figure out how Spotify works. So in terms of uploading stuff onto there, so let's do the main videos first, and then we'll move on to the live streams and things after that. Rustler, good day. Oh, in fact, no. Actually, I didn't actually answer Commander Ray's question. Is this Bloodraven? I tend to think this isn't. I tend to think this is Melisandre, who is influencing things through Vance. So not a direct Bloodraven thing. Bloodraven wants Jon to be at the wall, as far as we can tell, at the wall defending humanity. He's given him a vision of him doing that. He's given him the tools that he needs, the dragonglass and things like that. So I think that is what Bloodraven's default is for Jon. Melisandre wants Jon to be going down to Winterfell and helping Stannis. So these seem to be slightly competing things. Often with Bloodraven, if Bloodraven is doing a thing, secretly manipulating, then George R. R. Martin will give us some little hints. Maybe Mormont's Raven will do something, or say a word or something, repeat a word. Maybe Ghost will appear and do some stuff. Ghost, of course, has the Bloodraven colouring, the red eyes, the white fur/skin. So those are the kinds of symbolic clues that we often get that Bloodraven is doing a thing secretly. We haven't had them here. This feels very much like a Melisandre thing. Rustler, good day, Robert. Hope you and Dan the dog are well. My question is, before the pink letter, does Ramsay ever acknowledge Jon Snow or mention he even knows who he is? If not, this lends to the idea that he wasn't responsible for the letter. Well, he does. He's very aware of it. Jon Snow's existence is known. The fact that Jon Snow went to the wall is known, and the fact that he became Lord Commander is known. So that is just the bits of information out there. So Ramsay is very aware of Jon Snow's existence, and does indeed see him as a threat. I mentioned we've had a couple of letters from Ramsay before. One of them was sent to Jon at the wall. So this is how we know what Ramsay's handwriting is like, because we saw it that first time. So yes, he does. He is aware of Jon. If you say if not, it lends to the idea that he wasn't responsible for the letter. Yeah, I guess so. This is one of those things that I think you could argue either way. You could, I suppose, also argue Jon has seen a letter, a real letter from Ramsay, and then he sees this other letter, and his thought is not, oh, this looks a bit different. So it's you could argue it either way as evidence, sort of pushing that Ramsay did or didn't write it. Orion's Orcas saying, "Hi, Robert. The pink letter is a mystery. I thought Winterfell was surrounded and covered with ice and high snowdrifts, that people could hardly see their own hands outstretched. So how the 7 days of battle? How the captures? I think it's the Red Witch. No one is going to be able to do anything until the snows melt, the air clears, and she gets Jon to take her to Stannis to burn Shireen. What are your thoughts? Whatever else Stannis is, he is the rightful heir to the Iron Throne, and so King's Blood and all that." And then saying, "Thank you for video, thank you for the moderators." So yes, let's actually do moderators, a little bit of moderator love. So we've got quite a few moderators today. If you are watching this live, the reason why the chat is such a fun place, accepting and open to good discussion, is because the moderators do a fantastic job. So if you could just show them a little bit of love, I would hugely appreciate that. In terms of the question here about Winterfell, how does this even work if Winterfell's snowed under? And it is snowed under. The way this is described is that, so Theon, when he's wandering outside, he holds his hand out. He can barely see his hand because the snowstorm is that bad. When he dived out off the wall with Jane Poole, it was into a snowdrift over 40 feet deep. So that's like over 12 meters. So this is lots of snow going on. At one point, he looks and thinks that Winterfell itself is kind of disappearing under the snow. It's like it's being buried by the snow. This is why as Stannis was getting closer and closer to Winterfell with his army, their progress slowed and slowed and slowed. When they left Deepwood Motte, it was, I think, 2 weeks' journey. They thought it was going to be. There was no snow on the ground, just a little bit of frost in the morning. As they march, each day the weather gets worse. They slow down. More horses and people die of the cold until he grinds to halt. The reason why he's in that Crofters village is because he simply cannot move forward any further. His army would freeze to death. So, yes, these are terrible conditions. How can a battle possibly take place? Well, I think a small battle outside definitely can, in as much as Roose has sent out a force of Freys and Manderlys to go and take on Stannis. The Manderlys aren't going to attack Stannis; they will turn on the Freys. But pardon me, we will have a battle here. That bit I'm pretty certain about. And that's snow or no snow. It will be in the snow. It will make things very hard. It'll get very confusing. There's lots of people who are digging holes in things and knowing that they'll get covered up by the snow, and then people will ride into them. There's lots of that kind of plotting going on. But after that battle, can Stannis head back to Winterfell? I mean, he hasn't been able to so far. So the suggestion is no. The suggestion is he's going to still be there, unless something changes. And my feeling is that we will get Melisandre, she can't see Stannis, so she does not know what's going on with Stannis. She will get information about what's going on with Stannis, because Stannis has sent people up to the wall. He sent fake Arya up to the wall, Tycho-Nestoris and a few of his soldiers. He sent them up to the wall, and they will be able to say, Stannis is dug in now, but he's losing men every day. He can't advance to Winterfell. And that's the point at which Melisandre will go, I need to do some sort of magic. And that, I personally suspect, is going to be the thing which prompts her to be saying, we need to, in order to change the weather, this is big magic, we need some king's blood. And this is the point at which Shireen might get into danger, in my view, because she will then be wanting to sacrifice people in order to do the magic, in order to help Stannis advance. This is one of the things, it's just a very small point, but the TV show did not show enough snow here by any stretch of the imagination. It looked a little bit cold, a little bit wintry. There was some white stuff on the ground. It looked pretty hard going, but that's a completely different scale to what we have in the books. In the books, this is snowdrifts, several people high, horses dying in the cold, people having to eat their horses. They're unable to travel more than half a mile in a day, but simply because the snow was so deep that you just could not move all of your wagons through it. The situation is really bleak for Stannis right now. Corvus Corax saying, good evening, Robert. I hope you're keeping well. While the guilt knowledge in the pink letter leans towards Mance, I'm a bit baffled that Mance knows how to read and write. Thoughts? Also, when I first read this part years ago, I innocently assumed that the timeline at the wall was not in line with Winterfell. After your Sorrows video, it made me revisit this. What if the letter is what it seems and it is a post-battle letter in a time glitch? Could be ramping up for more timeline manipulation to come. Okay, so a couple of points here. The first one, can Mance read and write? Well, we don't have any evidence either way on this. One possible hint is that the name he chooses to go to Winterfell with is Abel the Bard. which is uh, the naming after Bale the Bard, who's a legendary figure who snuck into Winterfell and into the Winterfell crypts, stole the daughter of the King of Winter there, and why this might hint that he knows his letters is that this isn't just like a name that he's plucked out of nowhere that is a bit like Bale the Bard. He's taken the letters and rearranged them to another word, which seems to imply that he does understand writing. It's not conclusive, but it's the hint is there. The other thing I would say is that it's entirely possible that somebody else could have written, just because he may or may not know how to write it, he could get somebody else to do it. That's not a problem. Maybe one of his spear wives could. We don't know huge amounts about that. He's brought 6 women down with him. Who knows what they might know. The second part is about whether or not there might be some kind of time glitch going on here. I'm glad you enjoyed the Soros video. I really enjoyed making that. It's a sort of an ongoing fan question theory. What happened to Tyrion in the Soros? Because the boat he's on goes under the bridge, and then there's an argument, and then it approaches the same bridge again, and it's like, well, what happened? Did they go into some kind of time loop thing? I answered that one in that video, so I'm not going to go down into that particular rabbit hole. But could the same thing be happening here? Well, I think the answer is probably, well, it's not necessary. Because, as I said earlier, that we don't know exact timings. There are people, if you're interested, there are people out there who've done epic work, heroic work, trying to map out on an almost day-to-day basis when each of the different chapters happen, what dates things happen within the book. And you can do that by cross-referencing a whole series of things. You know, we know that this happened then, and because that's mentioned in this other chapter, that means this must happen after that. Or we know it takes 2 weeks to go from A to B. So if you say you're going from A to B, then this next chapter, and you've just arrived there, that must be 2 weeks. That kind of thing, where you can look for the little context clues, add them all up, and plot out a timeline for all of the different chapters. The problem with these ones is that we don't have the other chapters around the outside that will allow us to match up timelines. We don't know exactly when, how long. Saying days past or whatever doesn't necessarily help here. So we don't know the exact timing of these kinds of things. I think the implication is that this must happen after the Theon 1 chapter, that we have the pre-release chapter from the Winds of Winter. So it has to happen after that. But not too long after that. So that's the kind of timing we're looking at. Does this mean that it could be a time glitch? I don't think that's necessary. I think it's a nice idea, but I don't think it's necessary. Caius Ballerina saying the assassination of Jon all feels very Julius Caesar-y. How many people do you think are involved in the plot? Only 23 of the 30 actually stabbed Caesar after the 70 actually stabbed Caesar after all. It's a good question. How many people are in on the plot? So this happened. I'm just going to pick at the word plot here, because I suspect that there are a lot of members of the Night's Watch who are not happy with Jon. This could be dozens, could even be hundreds. So there's not huge amounts of Night's Watch left, but there will be a significant number who actively disagreed with what Jon had been doing up to that point. When he announced he was abandoning his Night's Watch vows, everybody suddenly got very heated. And he went outside, and that's when he got stabbed. So my feeling is that that was done more in the heat of the moment, rather than the plot. Shall we kill him? Okay, let's do it. Let's wait until this day. Let's do it this place. This was done in front of lots of other people. if they'd been plotting how to do this, they would have killed him in a slightly less open and obvious way, I suspect. So how many? It's hard to say. I suspect that we're going to only get a handful of people who actually do the stabbing, but there will probably be a lot of Night's Watch who are quite sympathetic with those who did. Great Khan, how or why could Robb make Jon his heir when he's joined the Night's Watch? Surely he knows it's impossible for crows to inherit anything. Yes, but he is king, and as king, he's in charge. So he can make the rules. And if he says, I'm freeing you from your Night's Watch vows, then Jon will be freed from his Night's Watch vows. If he says, I'm adding you into the line of succession, I'm legitimizing you, you can do that if you're a king. So that is what it is. The ability of king to do what he wants outweighs the Night's Watch vow. Rabbi Mitra saying, salutations, Robert and Dan the dog. When Tormund questions the letter's contents, do you notice how Jon's stance towards Melisandre changed at that moment? He then says to Tormund, Melisandre, look to the skies, she said, a raven in the storm. She saw this coming. All this was said after a series of chapters of Melisandre trying to convince Jon of the magic she possesses and her wish to make shadow babies with him. After addressing with the crew at the Shield Hall, Jon even says that he should talk with Melisandre after I see the Queen. If she could see a raven in a storm, she can find Ramsay Snow for me. So just prior to his death, has Jon Snow fully started to trust Melisandre's words and magic properly? So when he's resurrected, he will definitely want to find and deal with Ramsay. But more importantly for me, I think he will almost completely be given over to Melisandre and her magic. So you just asked what I think of your train of thinking. I mean, your train of thought here, I think, is an interesting one. The fact that Jon really, for the first time, decides he wants to use Melisandre's abilities, that was quite a big shift, because he's there saying, okay, I've been convinced. She did see this was going to happen. I'm now convinced, and I'm going to go to her, and I'm going to see whether she can now tell me where Ramsay Snow is, Ramsay Bolton is. So for the first time, he's using her abilities, and he's proactively going to her. But then he's killed. When he comes back, he's not going to be the same. Let's not pretend otherwise. He's not going to be the same. But I think it's a fair estimate to say that he will be more believing of Melisandre's powers than he would otherwise have been. So yes, this whole thing, one of the side effects of this whole thing is Jon now proactively wants Melisandre on his team. Sebastian Holden. Bran reaches out to Jon as a three-eyed tree in Book 2 and helps him understand the wildlings. He is in the crypts at the time. Is this future Bran? Yes. So I think we will find future Bran is going to make a lot of use of going through the Weirwood network at different times. And he, variously talks to his father, to Theon, to Jon. So he interacts through these trees quite a lot. We've not see him do it yet. So yes, this is future Theon. It's future Bran, sorry. CK, let's talk shipping. Do you think Jon will briefly end up with Dany, or is Val set up to be his final wildling queen? I don't think Val, no. All of the hints that we've got are that he and Dany will fall in love, marry, whatever. I think my favorite one is in the House of the Undying, and Dany gets this vision, which is one of three, and certainly the first one is about Drogo, the man that she married. The second one possibly is about Hisdar. the second person she married, and the third one is about a sweet-smelling blue rose growing from an ice wall, which is Jon. That's his symbolism. And so he has been set up there as being Dany's love interest. So I think that is where this is going to go. Val, I mean, Val's a great character, and everyone seems to want to get with her. But I don't think Jon. I think Melisandre might be trying to get rid of him, get with him, as we've seen. But Val, not as lovers, I don't think, no. Catherine Furseth saying, "Hi, Robert. If we lift our heads a little bit above just considering the pink letter and look at the world of A Song of Ice and Fire as a whole, mysterious letters have had quite an impact from time to time. First and foremost, perhaps, is the letter Aegon the Conqueror received from Dorne, which made him accept peace. Can you think of other parallel letters which have profoundly affected the story or turns of history? There's the letter Daemon learns about the death sentence for Nettles that seems to strengthen his resolve in his next action, etc. Which other letters can you think of, and how does George R. R. Martin use them for story purposes?" Yes, so I think you've made a really valuable observation here. He loves having these letters that it's a bit mysterious what they say. This one, obviously, we know what it says. It's the who sent it that's the mystery. So George R. R. Martin does make quite a lot of use of that. Rob, after he killed Lord Karstark, he apparently stayed up all night or half the night writing a letter, which he then burned. That's a fascinating one. I think Robb Stark's will is set up. It's not a letter per se, but I think Robb Stark's will is set up along this same kind of idea, is that we think we know roughly what it says, given all the context clues, but we've not actually seen the text. We don't know exactly what it says. So, yeah, that's another one there. And Tywin's letters, obviously, another thing that influences a lot in this story. Tywin writing to people, and during the war, the phrase "the Boltons," the Spices, that was him bringing people on side and him manipulating events, but it was behind the scenes. We don't see these letters. We see Roose getting a letter and burning it. That's a letter from his wife with perhaps some kind of coded message in it. So we get lots of these kind of letters. Why does George R. R. Martin do it? Well, I think he enjoys this idea of the written word versus the lived experience. And one of the things he tries to show is that the written word is not necessarily, you can't believe it 100% all the time. He's thinking here about history books and things like that, but I think we see it here in these letters. Can we trust that letter from Ramsay? No, we don't appear to be able to. What was going on in the letter to Aegon the Conqueror? That's a mystery. So, and that's not recorded. That's gone now. So actually, what matters is what happens as a result, not the actual words there on the page. So I think that's what he's sort of doing. Communication is very important, but we have a lot of missing information, and we often do not know exactly what that written communication can deliver. Sebastian Holden, grey smile is a grey joy, question mark. I'll pass on that one. I'll try and come back to that next week. Will Dany fall for Euron? No, I don't think so. They might never meet. If Euron steals one of her dragons, then there's no way that she will ever fall for him. But yeah, there's no buts there. So no, Dany will not fall for Euron. Sam, lawyer here, not qualified in Westeros yet. Rob's will is worded such to take effect from the moment he died. So Jon didn't break his vows and was fulfilling his duty as heir, might affect his reflection on resurrection. Yes, he doesn't know this, of course, so he's not acting on that information. And we've also not seen the exact wording of Rob's will, so we don't know exactly what it says. Rob's will, I've talked about this a few times. It's a legal minefield if you were to just follow it down, because exactly how it's worded could have huge amounts of difference. If it says, because my beloved brothers Bran and Rickon are dead, that means that I don't have any heirs, and for that reason alone, I make Jon Snow, I legitimize him and make him my heir. If it's that, then surely there's a very strong case morally, if not legally, for saying that will was written on a false assumption that Bran and Rickon were dead. If Rob had known that they were alive, then he wouldn't have ever written that will like that. So there's possibilities here about all the wording could affect lots of different things. I suspect that Jon doesn't care too much about the legality of whether he was okay to quit the Night's Watch. I think he was just doing the right thing. What's interesting, incidentally, is I find it quite interesting, is that we see a bit of his brain process. He doesn't get angry, as we think maybe this is it. This is not an angry response, him saying, "Oh, well, I'm going to go to Winterfell," but it is about his Stark heritage. He thinks immediately. He thinks to Rob. He thinks about Bran. He thinks about Arya. This is him thinking about his family. And so this is the kind of like the embracing that part of himself is what brings him to the decision that he has to go to Winterfell. And I'll probably do a short video on this one at some point. It's noticeable that the Starks, which are spread out all over the place, what brings them back is this reclamation of Starkishness in some way. Arya, for example, her storyline in Bravos is all about this struggle between her retaining at some level her Starkish identity and then trying to get her to be no one. So she will come back to Westeros because of this re-embracing of her Stark identity. Sansa has been slowly coming to this conclusion that actually, yeah, you know what, Winterfell wasn't so bad, was it? And with her, she has been hiding as Elaine, but then revealed as a Stark, and that is going to be what prompts her to be heading back to the north. Rickon being told that you have to come back to Winterfell because there must be a Stark in Winterfell, that kind of thing. So yes, there's a lot there in terms of the Starks are coming back because they are starting to feel more Starkish. Sir Steve the O, good evening. Unrelated question. Yes, so the questions are now going to start moving a little bit further away from just the pink letter. Unrelated question. What's up with Roose and his leeches? George R. R. Martin, is George R. R. Martin hinting at a sinister plot line, e.g. a vampire skin changer, or just a weird medieval medical treatment? By the way, one of my favourite Jaime quips is in A Storm of Swords at the end of one of the chapters. I think he was speaking to Qyburn, who tells Jaime that Lord Bolton loves his leeches, and Jaime's final thought is, yes, he would, or something to that effect. Right. Yeah, that's Jaime, who's very clever and fun when you're in his POV. He actually is very engaging. So is George R. R. Martin hinting with this leeching that he does? Is he hinting at something? I mean, there was a fan theory many years ago that Roose Bolton was actually a vampire of some kind. I don't think that's the case. I haven't really got the evidence for it, to be honest. But I think it operates on a number of different things. First of all, it shows us elements of his character. He is he's not squeamish. He does the thing that he thinks is right, and he doesn't really care. Other people don't like this idea of having leeches. He thinks, "Yep, this is what's working, so I'm going to do that." Um, uh, and I think the other thing is that there's this kind of driven and self-control kind of facets that we've got going on here. We're being shown what he is like. He is willing to take some sort of pain and unpleasant things in order to achieve the thing that he wants to do. There's some self-control there, and there's also this. It's quite driven to do this. And he's willing to make sacrifices to get what he wants. But through it all, you have to say that it makes his skin crawl, doesn't it? The idea, and that I think is what George R. Martin is showing for us here. He's not a nice guy. It feels you don't want to touch it. You don't want to go near him, and that I think is one of the kind of the hints that George R. Martin was giving us, that this guy's not going to go well. CK, do you think we will get a mid-book time skip? Seems like the perfect solution for George R. R. Martin to settle what he needs to in the meantime and skip ahead. No, I think he's given up on time skips. I've talked about the 5-year time gap a few times recently. So I think as much as there's a desire for like the younger characters to grow up, etc., I think at this stage, all of the different characters, they're going to start getting more connected. And whereas we are at place, a lot of the characters are in places where they could theoretically stay for 6 months without much happening. You're going to have the same issue that George R. Martin had when he was thinking about a 5-year gap. Cersei's not going to sit around for 6 months not doing anything. And realistically, Jon's situation, something will happen in that 6 months. Yeldenil saying, "Hi Robert, hi Dan, and thank you mods. If you haven't already, could you please elaborate on why so many fans and you believe the pink letter is not written by Ramsay?" I think I have covered that one off already. I also wonder what you think may happen to the Greyjoys, Asher and Theon, going forward. Well, this is an interesting question. So I think that we overuse the phrase redemption arc, but I think that Theon is on a redemption arc, and I think that will bring him back around to making recompense with the Starks in some way, saving them, something along those lines. And so I think his arc is to slowly reclaim himself, and then once he has reclaimed himself, he personally will. Maybe he'll sacrifice himself for the Starks. Maybe he'll just work for them in some way, come to terms with, talk to them so that everyone can forgive each other. Whatever it is, I think he's actually on that kind of classic arc. Asher, I think, although she has been very useful as this kind of eyes and ears around the Northern campaign for the Greyjoys, I think she is increasingly going to be the opposition to Euron. And once she's finished in the north, I think she can then go off and hear all the horrific things that Euron has been doing. And I think that at the end of all of this, when Euron's gone, then Asher will be in a position to rule. So I think that actually we will end up with her being in charge of the Iron Islands. Taylor Jones, in Tolkien's world, breaking oaths tends to have real consequences. We hear a lot in A Song of Ice and Fire that words are wind. Is there evidence to the contrary, that there are consequences, maybe just weirwood oaths? Weirwood oaths, yes. Also, quite a lot is made of guessed right and things like that, and you're cursed if you're breaking it. And so this is the phrase. Who obviously Rob was welcomed, and Cat made sure that he was given the salt in the bread or whatever it is to signify that this person there has guessed right and they are under protection. And Walder Frey just went against all of that. I kind of think that will come back on them. Maybe there is a wedding coming up in Riverrun. Maybe they're going to have their own red wedding happen to them. It's possible. Tolkien's world was a lot easier because first of all, he didn't explain his magic system, but then secondly, there is a god who has created these rules. George R. Martin is less concerned about the rules so much as what is the impact on humans and the plot going forward. Gilios, a member for 9 months. Fantastic. Thank you so much. Saying, is there any evidence Mance Rayder is literate? I'm doubtful that the Night's Watch would have educated a young Mance in reading and writing. Yeah, I did answer this one a little bit earlier in the stream. I think the headline is no, there's no evidence one way or the other. He clearly is intelligent and articulate. As a bard, he clearly knows and understands lots of songs. He could be self-taught. There is a possible hint in the fact that his name that he takes when he goes to Winterfell is Abel the Bard, which is a play on Bale the Bard. But it's not just like a slightly rhyming name. He's taken the letters and mixing them up, which seems to imply sort of an understanding of how words work at the very least. But beyond that, no, we haven't got evidence one way or the other. He seems capable of it. Whether he actually ever took the time, we don't know. Anon 42. Greetings, Dan, the dog, and the mods, and Robert. Off topic. Assuming that Dragonbinder successfully binds at least one dragon, is there any hint as to how this is going to be resolved? Will Dany be able to reclaim her dragon or have to kill it? Will she face the long night with only 2 dragons? What does that mean for the 3 heads of the dragon prophecy? This is wild speculation theory territory. So if there's no hint in the books, how would I personally want this to play out? Okay, so if one of the, let's say Viserion, one of the dragons is caught by Dragonbinder and flies all the way back to Westeros to be with Euron, what does that kind of mean? Well, first of all, will that happen? I mean, I think we can call it 50-50. Yeah, I think that's the plan from Euron. But there are a huge amount of people around Victarion that the Dusky Lady, Makoro, that won't want him to succeed in that. Won't want Victarion to succeed in doing what he's doing, as in capturing one of the dragons. So, I put it, I wouldn't say 50-50, but there's a chance either way that it does work. What would that mean? Well, I think this affects who she can trust. At some points, she thinks there's only ever going to be 2 men that I trust. The implication being the men that she thinks are going to be riding the other 2 dragons, the 2 Targaryens. So that will affect her thought process that actually I'm now only looking for 1 man. Secondly, I think probably the most important thing is that if Dany loses her dragon, and she's pretty sure that this has gone somewhere in Westeros, this is going to affect her strategy going forward. Maybe her instinct might have been to stay in Essos, stay in Meereen for a little bit, gather even more strength, and then head over. But if she can now just charge over straight away, I think that's where she's more likely to go, because she will be desperate to get her dragons back. No, pardon me. Lord Medici. I've got 2 more questions here from my patrons, so now's a good time to drop any more questions into the chat. Lord Medici saying, quite a while ago, you mentioned Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell in the context of how you find the book version of the others similar to the fairies of this show. Can you tell us a bit more about the show? Is it worth a watch? Just looking for an alternative to a Song of Ice and Fire based TV until we get a Night of the Seven Kingdoms. Well, let me pick up firstly on Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell. It's a fantastic book, first of all, by Susanna Clarke, one of my favourite books of fantasy. It's basically set in the very early 19th century in England, and two magicians. But the context that I had here is that I was using was to compare the others in A Song of Ice and Fire with the fairy folk, the she basically that they have in that story. And I suspect the comparison, I can't remember exactly what I was saying. I suspect the comparison I was making was that this is like the classic she fairies idea from kind of folklore, is that they can be beautiful, they can be enticing, they can be very persuasive. But when you strike a deal with them, they're very tricksy. And you might get the letter of what you said, but actually they're trying to trick you. They're trying to steal babies away and take them off into their fairyland. They're manipulating humans, this kind of thing. Now, that the way that the story is written, you're supposed to be slightly uncertain, slightly scared. What powers do they have? How does this even work? They're from a completely different kind of dimension, as it were. That works for me as a kind of analogy for the others. They're obviously very different in many different ways, but this idea of they seem to be almost from a different dimension. What they're planning is immensely subtle and clever, and it's based on their own mode of thinking, not ours. It is a different way of thinking to ours because they're different creatures and they've got different ways of doing things. So the otherworldly aspect, I think there are clear, strong echoes. In terms of sort of a lot more nitty gritty of what the others are and how they operate, then no, they're quite different. But you also, sorry, which was a digression away from, is the TV show Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell worth it? I think it was an excellent TV show. I really do. I prefer the books, but then I say books, the book. But then I rate that as one of my favorite fantasy stories, possibly of all time. I think it works so well. So yeah, check it out. I think they only did one season, something like 7 episodes. It was very good. But don't expect there to be like more series after that. Susanna Clarke is notoriously very slow at writing. She did Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell, and then there was a very long gap. To the extent to which her, I think it was an editor I read an interview with, had sort of given up on her. It was just like, okay, I'm now not going to expect. I think that's it now. I think she's written one amazing book, which has clearly earned her a reasonable amount of money. She doesn't need to do anything else, so I'm not expecting any more books. And then suddenly, clonk, another book appeared out of nowhere, which is Piranesi, which is another fantastic story if you ever get a chance to read that. Cursed Ballerina saying, I'm a Barbary Dustin pink letter truther. She wanted to go into the crypts where Mance is hiding. Ricewell and Dustin's squires are building snowmen, and the letter says for Jon to come and see his allies. Well, let's see what the wording is in terms of come and see his allies. I want his wallet. I can't see the allies bit here in terms of actual specific wording, but might Barbary Dustin have done it? I don't think she knows Jon well enough is my kind of feeling on that. I'm also not 100% certain that she's Ned Stark's bastard. She would particularly want to treat well. She hates Ned with every fibre of her being. So the idea of Ned Stark's bastard, I'm not entirely sure how she would react to that. The getting Jon to come down implies you need to understand Jon on a personal level, how he would react to things, which she doesn't seem to have. And then secondly, this has to be a part of a wider plan, because simply pushing his buttons to get him to come down, you do not know what's he going to do. Is he come down on his own? Is he going to come down with a huge army? What would he be likely to do? The most likely thing, therefore, is that this is part of a wider strategy, linking up with Stannis' army and linking up with the rebels inside. Second part, Cash Ballerina saying, on the wall, Ramsay killed Domeric and she tries to protect Arya. I think Mance and Barbary worked together to write the letter. Ramsay killed Domeric and she does try and protect Arya. Yeah, I think that's fair. So my take is that she is actually part of this plot. The North Remembers plot, for want of a better name, which is Lord Manderly is leading. So I think she is a part of that. Her wanting to go to the crypts, I think there are two reasons. The more I read into this, the more I think there are two reasons. The first reason is the reason that she sort of gives Theon, really, which is that she does not want Ned Stark's bones being brought back to Winterfell and interred in Winterfell. Now, she's set up spies watching the roads, so she's pretty sure that he couldn't have got through. But just in case, she did want to just double check that nobody's managed to sneak through and they haven't managed to be there. So she goes up, has a check, that's all fine. The second reason seems to be that she was there and she was noting the swords that have gone. And why is that important? Because the message which will have come out that the Manderlys have is that Bran and Rickon survived by hiding in the Winterfell crypts, stealing some of the swords and getting away. Barbary Dustin can't validate their story in terms of going to find Rickon or Bran or anyone like that, but she can see whether or not the bit of the story that the first bit of the story could be true. Is it the case that there are some swords that were stolen from Winterfell crypts? She went down there and confirmed that that is the case. So she can now start to believe that Rickon and Bran are still alive, which will mean that she is more likely to stay with the or make sure that her support is not for Ramsay, but she is siding with Wyman Manderly. One last question from my patrons. This is Martin S. This is a Lord of the Rings question, which is building on some questions you did last week, or observations last week, really, about weaker heroes in fantasy saving the day when the far more skilled and powerful big good guy could not. You say, I have no real problem with stories that make less powerful characters matter, but the thing is, you must make it kind of work mechanically in order not to fall flat. I think Frodo and Sam, in a sense of being heroes, works because the task of destroying the One Ring was about resisting the ring's temptation for as long as possible, and it was dangerous to put the ring in the keeping of the most powerful beings on the Free People's side. It's far less convincing to me that defeating a dark wizard directly in combat has nothing to do with raw capacity in combat. I confess not having read Harry Potter, but from the movies it's not clear to me why Albus Dumbledore could not have done more of what fell to Harry and friends. You also give an example from Star Wars here about this falling to Luke to do stuff when you got some really impressive people there, like Yoda, Mace Windu. Um, your conclusion is you think Tolkien does this better than either of the other two things you mentioned. The only time when Tolkien does something similar is with Éowyn and the Witch King's fate. I still think he crafted it more cleverly than most fantasy authors do fate, but it isn't my favourite part of The Lord of the Rings. Then again, I'm kind of a mathematical and natural science kind of guy. Might be I'm able to suspend my disbelief, that I'm able to suspend my disbelief a bit less than many other readers and viewers. Yeah, so a really interesting thought process there. I kind of agree with you. Frodo and Sam work as these are the people who win the day because who they are not powerful, and that is the whole point. So that works really well there. Um, uh, with the Éowyn thing, I entirely understand when some people don't like it, but I think the key bit. I did a video on this as well, if you're interested. But the key bit here with Éowyn killing the Witch King is it wasn't actually her on her own. This was Merry with that sword, and the sword is the key to everything. If he had not managed to stab, you know, from behind the Witch King with that sword that they got that had been forged millennia earlier, specifically to be fighting the evils of the Witch King of Angmar. If Merry hadn't been there with that sword at that particular time, then Éowyn probably would have failed. Okay, and that's my questions from my patrons. Let's have a quick flick through the chat. Stephen Carver saying, I don't think Theon has enough fingers left to hold a pencil steady in order to write anything legible. Yeah, I mean, I think it's not Theon who wrote it. I would agree. Andrew Kay saying it has to be something legit in monarchs being able to break oaths via decree. Otherwise, Stannis would not offer to Jon, Maester Aemon, consideration, Vagon, etc. Yes, so the kings are able to break oaths via decree. They certainly Maester Aemon was offered by some to become king. And he wasn't in the Night's Watch at the time, but he was a maester, and so was under the rules and vows of the maesters. So it must have theoretically been possible. The king can do what they want, basically, is I think the answer to this. Taylor Jones saying, saw someone online today arguing that Gandalf had superhuman strength even without his magic. Seems wrong to me. Well, yes, I think I would agree. He was deliberately clothed in the body of an old man who grew tired. Quickly through. Reen Benkhughes wondering if Theon did it. We had other people in the chat have sort of answered that. Okay. Right. I think with that, I did last week. I did an epic. You may remember I did an epic length live stream, which was 4 hours, and I think it was 4 hours and 40 or something like that. But this one, thankfully, for my sleep is going to be a little bit shorter. So a few things though to sort of pick up on this. My take, if you want my considered take on this subject, then there is a video over on my main channel that I did, Who Wrote the Pink Letter, and I go through all the evidence. The conclusion there, spoilers, is I think it probably is Mance and Melisandre in cahoots on this one. If you look at the intentionality, what is it trying to do? Get Jon to do the things that we know they want him to be doing. So do go and check that one out. I'll mention Spotify again. If you find it easier to watch my main videos on Spotify. I literally just this week set myself up over there. So search for Indie Geek. You will find me. That's not a problem at all. And if you're feeling generous and wish to leave a nice review, that will be fantastic for the algorithm as well. So thank you in advance for that. I think next week I will probably do another pre-recorded one. I'll do a Lord of the Rings. We've not done a Lord of the Rings one for a long time, so I'll do a Lord of the Rings pre-recorded live stream coming up next week. But if you are watching this live stream back a little bit later, then appearing somewhere around here in a moment is going to be a playlist of other live streams that I've done. Appearing somewhere around here is a link to my Patreon page, which is the best way to support this channel if you wish to do so, in which case, thank you. I hugely appreciate it. So patrons, thank you so much. Moderators, you've done a fantastic job again, as you always do. Thank you very much. Take care, everyone, and I will see you same time next week.